I've interviewed a lot of senior engineers over the last few years. Here is something most candidates never hear. The decision is usually made in the first 5 minutes, not the final offer, because that comes later, full loop, calibration, and the rest of it. But the read, whether you think in systems or in feature, that's formed very early and almost uncomfortably early, guys. Everything after the first 5 minute mark is just you confirming the read or trying to pull back from it. This video is about what forms that read, the three signals, and I'll show you each one and I'll give you the exact candidate lines that score well and the ones that don't score well. Why does the read form so fast? It's simple. A senior engineer has asked this question 50 times or even 100 or 200 times. They have watched every pattern. The candidates who got offers behaved in specific ways at the start, and candidates went sideways. They didn't behave in that specific way. So, after a few years, the interviewer reads the early behavior faster than they realize. So, by minute 4, they will have a strong information itself. The behavior you show in the first 5 minutes of an interview is the behavior that you would show in first 5 minutes of a real design review on the job itself. The interview is predictive because it's fair simple over here. So the question is, what are they actually reading for? I would say three signals. Signal number one, what do you do in first 60 seconds after the question is asked? The question is usually broad. The question will be somewhere about design a customer support agent, design a document summarization service, design a code review assistant. It is underspecified and they have mentioned it on a purpose. A junior candidate would start designing immediately. They will reach for the whiteboard. They will draw the boxes. They say, okay, we would have a model here, a database here, a line graph in the middle. I'm going to host it on the AWS. If you consider a senior candidate, he doesn't draw anything. They'll ask the question. They'll start by asking three constraint question. Specifically, these are the three classes of question I would say. First is scale. How many requests per day? Is it concurrent sessions? What is the peak to average ratio? What is the data volume? Second one is cost and latency. What is budget per interaction? What are my P50 and P99 target? Is it real time or is the batch responses okay? Third, fault tolerance. What happens when a system is wrong? Can a human recover it? Or is it reversible? Or is it user facing or is it internal? So three categories, maybe six questions, and they'll be covering in first 90-second tops. Notice what the senior candidate is doing. They're establishing the decision surface before they start making the decision. They know the architecture for 100 requests a day is nothing like the architecture for million requests a day. So they refuse to design until they know which one it is. Now, let's talk about the assumption between my junior and a senior. A junior assumption would be is the architecture is a single right answer. A senior's assumption is the architecture is a response to a constraint that you have not been told yet. And here's the tell, guys. When a candidate starts drawing without asking, half the red is already formed. And that's just within 30 seconds. They will sound confident, they will draw cleanly, but they are failing this signal. And they actually don't know it when it is happening. Now, the second signal over here is, do you actually name the failure mode? Now, this actually shows up in 3 to 4 minutes in. The candidate is walking through the architecture that they proposed, and this is where the second signal would start separating. A junior candidate explains what the system does on a happy path. It sounds like this. The user will send a query, the query will go to a model, the model will generate the response will go back to the user. It's clean, it's linear, every step would work. A senior candidate tells the same story with failure modes woven in. So that's a key difference over here, guys. So if I want to give you a same walkthrough with failure modes woven in, I want you to listen to this difference. The user will send in the query. If the query is malformed or over length or wrong format, or if it is belonging to a known jailbreak signature, we reject it at the gateway before we pay for the downstream call. The query does not get into a model. If the model times out or rate limit, we have a fallback, a cheaper model with a shorter prompt or a degraded deterministic response. The response would come back. It goes through a validator. It will perform the structural check, policy check, grounding check. If validation fails, we don't just return it. We regenerate with a stricter prompt or escalate to a human review path. If you take a look at it, it contains the same three components, same architecture, but it's conveying completely different tone. And every component has a failure mode that's been thought through, not in a checklist at the end, but it is woven into the walkthrough itself. And that interleaving is the tell. It's hard to fake it. You have to hold the failure mode in your head at the same time you are describing the happy path. Now, inside the signal number two, there is a subsignal, which is the specificity. Here, we handle the errors gracefully is not a failure mode. Now, that's a placeholder. It's course negative because now the interviewer is thinking as you're hiding something behind a vague phrase. We return a 429 with a retry after header when an upstream model rate limits. And the client has exponential backoff with jitter capped at 30 seconds. Now that's a failure mode. Now that is specific, that is verifiable, and that's something operational. The interviewer is listening hard for the specificity because specificity proves that you've sat in front of this failure before. You didn't just read about it, you have actually handled it. And signal 3 shows up whenever a design choice comes up, like pick a vector store, pick a re-ranking strategy, or pick between streaming and non-streaming. Now, every interview has two or three of these. A junior candidate will pick one and they will explain what exactly it is. But a senior candidate will pick one and explain why in terms of trade-offs that they are accepting. So, same question. Pick a vector store and you have two answers right here. Junior one say as I'm going to use Pinecone. It's managed, it's reliable, it's easy to operate, and it has got good performance. Now that's a feature list. A senior would say as given the scale that we discussed, a few 100,000 vectors, I would go for managed like Pinecone. So self-hosted gives us more cost control and we can actually manage the data locally. But the operational burden doesn't pay off until we are more of maybe 10 million vectors. So the trade-off that I'm accepting is vendor lock-in and per query cost. I'm noting both as a risk and we would visit if the data residency rules change. If you take a look at it, it's the same choice, but you are sending a different signal. So if you think about it, the interviewer is not scoring whether you pick the right tool. They are rarely care about the right tool and there rarely is a right tool. They are scoring whether your choice is tied back to the constraint that you have established in the minute one. Candidate who listed the features in the design phase get exposed there. They pick the tool because they know it. They can't defend the choice in terms of scale, cost, or failure tolerance. And when the interviewer probes, what would you change your answer? They can't answer here. Now, there's one specific sentence that makes the best candidate. It starts with, I would not do X because Y. X is a common answer. Y is a constraint from the minute one. Now, that sentence says that I know the default and I'm rejecting it for this specific reason. Now, that's a senior move. And now that's the move of someone who has sat in real design reviews and where the default was wrong for that situation and they had to be argued against. So that one sentence shift the interviewer's read from probably good to a strong yes. Now, here is the counterintuitive part, guys. Most candidates prepare for senior interviews by optimizing for breadth, more tools, more architecture, more vendors, an opinion on every framework. Now, it's the wrong optimization. So, if you have a breadth without these three signal, it will read as a trained response. A senior interviewer can tell when you're reciting versus when you're thinking. And the three signals are all the thinking signals. You can't fake thinking by just memorizing it. So, what works is the opposite. Pick a handful of architecture that you can actually understand deeply. Know what constraints that they are good for. Know what constraints that they will fail under. Know what trade offs you accept when you actually choose them. In the interview, you don't need to know everything. You need to show that you can investigate especially a new problem with these three moves. Ask about constraint, name the failure mode, and reason about the trade off. Three architectures known deeply plus three moves, it will actually beat 20 architectures memorized as a trivia each and every time. You don't get hired for knowing more, you get hired for thinking better about what you actually know. So here is the key mental model from this video, guys. The interviewer is not asking you to design a system. They are not testing whether you know the pine cone, quadrant, or BB8 or PG vector. They are asking you to demonstrate the thinking that you would do on the day three of a real project. On day three of a real project, you're not reciting. You're actually sitting in a room with a vague requirement, asking questions to narrow down the design space, naming the system that could fail, justifying each choice against the constraint that your team has agreed on that morning. So if you do those three things in the interview, you are actually showing the thinking now. Now, what are the three moves that I want you to focus on? One, ask about the constraint before you design. Two, name the failure mode as part of a design, not in the list at the end. Three, reason about the trade-off, not the features. In the first 5 minutes, every design question, every round. All right, guys. So three signals, three moves. That's the whole test right here. If you do them in the first 5 minutes, you have communicated something that most candidates never communicate. You think about systems, not tools. You operate under the constraint, not against them. You've been in the room when the hard decisions got made. And here's the useful part, guys. The three moves are not something that you do it in the interview. They're something that you would do because you have done them before in real design reviews on real project. The interview is not asking you to pretend, it's asking you to demonstrate, which means the best way for preparing this is not memorizing more architecture. It's running enough real design reviews that these three moves become the way that you talk about the system by default without any effort. Now, when that becomes true, the 5 minute test is already passed even before your interview begins. So, if you want to practice this under interview pressure specifically for AI systems role, there's a 4 week challenge that we run specifically for our bootcamp learners, where we look into the constraint, failure mode, trade offs with reviews. So, if that's something that sounds interesting, the link is in the description. System ship demos don't. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.